Immigration is finally set to reach the House floor. House Republicans have reached a deal to vote on two separate measures next week, and it comes as a growing number of migrant families are being caught and separated at the border under the Trump administration's zero-tolerance policy. Many of them are seeking asylum after escaping domestic violence and gangs at home. NBC's Gotti Schwartz talked to one such family. He joins me from San Diego. Gotti, what did you find out?
Well, Craig, it is difficult to convey how big these implications are going to be. There are about 700,000 cases that are pending right now in the immigration system for asylum, and this is going to affect so many of those cases. In fact, it's going to affect basically any case where somebody comes to the United States seeking asylum because they are escaping gang violence. If that is central to their case, this is most likely going to play central to what the judge decides. It's difficult to really understand this system. It gets very, very complicated unless you know somebody that's going through it. So I want to introduce you to a woman named Maritza. We met her in Chicago a few days ago. She was part of that immigrant caravan that came to the border about a month ago asking for asylum. She said she was escaping gang violence. The story that you're about to hear is graphic. She did not want to tell it to us in front of her young children, but it's important to understand when you're trying to figure out why she came and exactly what she's trying to escape. So take a listen.
The family went out to look for their dad, and they found him in the field, and that he had been decapitated, and his head was found a distance away, and his body showed signs of torture. His nails were gone, his teeth had been cut out. And then she knew that they had to escape. So she took her daughters and they moved to Guatemala first. And then they moved to Mexico when a man found them in Guatemala. And each time she would move to these different countries, this man with the tattoos, very distinguishable tattoos on his face would find him. And this man would say, everything that happened in El Salvador has been forgiven, but you need to give me your daughters.
Now, fortunately, she was able to escape with her 4 daughters. She has 3 of her daughters, and those 3 daughters and her were released about 2 weeks ago. This happened before Jeff Sessions' latest edict, but one of her daughters, her oldest, 18 years old, is still being held at this detention center. She wasn't able to talk to her mom for quite some time. They were separated when they came into the country to ask for asylum, and now she says that she does not have a court date. She does not have a release date. She doesn't know when she's going to see her mother again. And she falls under this category of people that are fleeing that gang violence. So it's unclear exactly what's going to happen to her case, what's going to happen to so many of these cases. But one thing is clear, we're going to see a lot more deportations. And the fear is from families like Maritza's that if they are deported back to El Salvador, they're going to be killed. Craig, back to you.
Gotti Schwartz, gut-wrenching there in San Diego. Gotti, thank you. Victoria DeFrancesco is an immigration and political science expert at the University of Texas. She joins me now. And Victoria, we know, according to best guess estimates here, 550 migrant children have been separated from their families so far. As I understand it, just this past April, you were at a detention facility in Texas. You've seen firsthand what some of these families are going through. What did you see? What did you find? What did they tell you?
Right, Craig. So I was at the Carnes Detention Center, which is in southern Texas, and it is one of the few family detention centers where mothers are there with their children. And the story we just heard that Gotti talked about, sadly, is not the exception. We see hundreds of women fleeing this type of violence, fleeing domestic violence as well. The situation in these Central American countries is dire. And I think that it is very easy for folks in Washington or folks who don't have contact with immigrants to say, let's have zero tolerance, let's get tough on immigration, let's separate out the kids. But when you're sitting there across from these women and you're hearing their story and you're seeing their children, heart-wrenching doesn't even begin to describe what one feels.
And an official with the Department of Health and Human Services confirms that they're looking at expanding these facilities. I want to play something that the Attorney General of the United States, Jeff Sessions, said on Monday. This is him ruling in his formal opinion. Oh, it's not sound, excuse me. Let me read this to you. The asylum statute does not provide redress for all misfortune. The mere fact that a country may have problems effectively policing certain crimes, such as domestic violence or gang violence, or that certain populations are more likely to be victims of crime, cannot itself establish an asylum claim. What do you make of that assertion from the Attorney General?
So, Craig, technically, he's right. So, under our refugee and asylum laws, there are 5 categories under which you can claim refugee or asylee status. So, the first is race, persecution based on race, religion, nationality, political opinion, and membership in a particular group. And this last piece, the membership in a particular group, is where there's been wiggle room in the past, where previous administrations would allow folks who are part of a group that's not a gang, and they would get people in for asylee status based on that. But what Jeff Sessions is saying, that last category, that he's not going to allow that wiggle room, that discretion that previous administrations allowed for. So this is really where the door is being shut on these women that I saw in the detention center and that we see all across the country who are fleeing that gang violence, that, you know, they will risk their lives and their children's lives because they know that death is the only option if they stay.
Victoria DeFrancesco. Victoria, thank you. We're going to continue to stay on top of the story. We hope you'll come back.